Click the bell icon to get latest videos from Ekeeda.
Hello friends, we are going to talk about something called as forecasting today, or I should say demand forecasting. Now what is demand forecasting? Forecasting can be defined as predicting or estimating the future. Looking into the future can be defined as forecasting in very simple words, and therefore in operational research, forecasting is estimation of the future based on the past data. For example, as a salesman, I will like to know what are my expected sales based on my past sales of 10 months. As a manager, I may like to know what will be my expected production based on the production of the last 3 months. So, forecasting is not mere guesswork. It is a scientific method of predicting or estimating what may happen in the future. That is called as forecasting. Let's now discuss what are the different steps in forecasting, and then we'll talk about the methods of forecasting. The first step in any forecasting method is to determine the objectives of forecasting. That what is the purpose, why I am doing the forecasting. So I am forecasting the number of seats that can be won by a particular political party. I can forecast the rainfall, I can forecast the prices of the goods. It can be anything. So basically I should know what is the purpose, what is the objective of forecasting. Once that is finalized, then I can jump to the next step, that is, once I have finalized the objective of forecasting, the next step will be to select the period for which I want to do the forecasting. The more larger the period of the future for which I have to do the forecasting, more uncertainty may creep up in my forecasting methods. The more I go away from the present, but obviously I will always face high degree of uncertainty. Therefore, the period for which I want to do the forecast is very important for the forecaster. The third step that we are going to discuss the third step we are going to discuss is the selection of the method for forecasting. What methods are available? Which methods can be adopted? Under what circumstances? That can be easily understood by looking at what exactly I have to forecast. Based on that, the forecaster or the mathematician will decide what methods he needs to apply for getting the accurate details of the future. The next step, fourth step, will be to give the information or to collect the information for the forecasting, which can be collected based on the primary data or secondary data. Under primary data, I am collecting the data myself, so data will be more reliable, data might be more accurate. Under secondary data, data is collected by the third person, and therefore there will be always some reliability issues regarding the source of data. Therefore, it is very important that as a forecaster you decide the pros and the cons of the primary as well as secondary data. And then the last step in the forecasting process is making the actual forecast based on the past data, based on the current scenario. It might be very easy for a manager to forecast what shall be the demand in a particular month or in a particular week, and therefore that is the final step where based on the data the manager will decide the forecast, how much will be sold or purchased on a future date. So next, what can be the possible methods of forecasting? If I stick with only the quantitative methods, then there are many methods. But I will prefer to go through all the methods that can be used by an individual entrepreneur or by a manager for forecasting. The first and the simplest method is the salesman opinion method. Under salesman opinion method, a firm or a organization or the sales manager may like to know the opinion of the salesman who are in direct touch with the individuals or with the customers at the ground level. That way, the manufacturer may clearly know what will be the overall sales based on the past experience. At the same time, salesman may also give very vital inputs for the time when the goods may be required to be delivered. Therefore, it is very important that this method gives more importance and reliance to the judgment of the salesman. The second method we are going to talk about is the second method we are going to discuss is called as survey of buyer's intention. Now this is more or less similar to the first method, but here we look at the perspective of the buyers only. Under this method, the forecasting might be done based on the survey conducted among the buyers, so that how much quantity of a particular product they are going to buy in a particular time of the month. That way it becomes very easy for the seller to decide how much stock they should maintain or how much quantity they should purchase. The third method we are going to talk about is the executive judgment method. The third method I'm going to talk about is called as executive judgment method. Under this method, the top managers or maybe the ground level managers may be asked regarding the feedback for their product. Thereby, they can easily understand how much quantity of their products are sold in the market on day-to-day basis. This method is called as the executive judgment method because the senior most executives or the so-called experts actually take the judgment based on their knowledge, based on their experience and overall outlook. The next method I'm going to talk about is market test method. Under market test method, a manufacturer might decide to release his product in a very small quantity to a very limited customers just to take the response of the market कि market में मेरे product के लिए क्या response है वो decide कर ही मैं मेरा product इंडिया में launch करूँगा. उस बेस पे कंपनीज में go for something called as the market test method. This method is not very suitable for carrying out the test of a newly introduced product which might have not been there in the past. The next method we are going to talk about is called as the trend projection method. Now trend indicates a increase or decrease in the information given in the question. Okay, so any changes, any rising patterns, as any decreasing patterns in the particular business can be used as a trend to decide the flow of goods or money in that particular premises. So in a trend projection method, we try to find out one value when the other value is given in the problem. The value that is given is called as independent and the value that will be obtained will be called as the dependent variable. Let's see how to work it out. Under trend prediction method, I'd like to discuss the first method. The first method I'm going to discuss today is correlation. Now, what is correlation and then how it will be used for forecasting? Correlation basically defines the extent of relationship between any two variables. Let us say height of the child and height of the parents. Can they be related with each other? But obviously, parents का height ज़्यादा होगा तो बच्चे का height ज़्यादा होगा. On the contrary, if the parents का height कम होगा तो शायद बच्चे का height भी कम होगा. This is the general perception or the general statement we are making, where correlation explains the degree of relationship between two or more variables. So दो या दो से ज़्यादा variables के बीच में क्या कोई relationship है क्या? For example, age of the husband and age of the wife. Can they be correlated with each other? Can they be said to be related with each other? That is indicated by the correlation. For correlation, we have got a formula. So the formula for correlation is n into summation xy minus summation x into summation y upon n into summation x square minus summation x the whole square into n into summation y square minus summation y the whole square. The correlation will always lie between -1 and +1. So it will be +1. +1 matlab perfectly positive correlation. Perfectly positive correlation. And -1 indicates perfectly negative correlation. Any value between -1 and +1 will be the value for correlation. -1 and +1 are the extreme values which may come. You won't get a correlation which has a value more than 1 or more than -1. Therefore, it is very important to understand that correlation always indicates the extent of relationship. If my correlation is 0.3 to 0.5, I may call it as a weak correlation. For any correlation between 0.5 or 0.6 to 0.8 is a high correlation, and anything above 0.8 can be called as a very high correlation. Then we'll talk about the next part, that is regression. Now the next part I'm going to discuss is called as regression. Now correlation only establishes the relationship between two variables, two particular factors like the rainfall and the agricultural production, size of the shoes and the height, age of the husband and the age of the wife. But then, can it be used for forecasting? Can I estimate one value when the other value is known in the problem? No. This is where regression comes into the picture. To regress means to estimate one value when the other value is given in the problem. Imagine I know the amount of rainfall for the last 5 years. And the average rainfall for the last 5 years is, now based on this data, can I find out the rainfall or the average rainfall in the 6th year or the 7th year? This is where regression come into the picture. Now to find out regression, we are going to just improvise the formula of correlation. Under regression, we have two coefficients called as the regression coefficients. One is called as the regression coefficient x on y, and the other one is called as regression coefficient y on x. Now to find out regression coefficients and what does they indicate, let's see. For regression coefficient x on y, we have got the formula n into summation xy minus summation x into summation y upon summation y square minus summation y into whole square. For regression coefficient y on x, we have got the formula n into summation xy minus summation x into summation y upon n into summation x square minus summation x the whole square. Now what does regression coefficient indicates? How one variable may impact the other variable. For example, impact of x on y can be indicated by the coefficient x on y, whereas impact of y on x can be indicated by the coefficient y on x. Once these two coefficients are estimated or calculated, we can easily estimate any one value provided the other value is given. So I can estimate x when y is given in the problem. I can estimate y when x is given in the problem. For that we have got two equations, regression equations x on y and regression equation y on x. This is my regression equation x on y, where on the left side it will be x minus x bar and on the right hand side it will be y minus y bar into bxy, where x bar will be the average of x, that is summation x upon n, and y bar will be the average of y, that is summation y upon n. The formula for the second regression equation y on x will be exactly reverse. Regression equation y on x can be explained or defined as y minus y bar equals to x minus x bar into byx. So these are the two equations that I can use to calculate one of the value if the other value is given in the problem. For example, x on y will be used to find out x when the value of y is given in the problem. And y on x shall be used to find out y when x is given in the problem. So these are the two possible ways to estimate the values, that is regression equation x on y and regression equation y on x. The next thing I'm going to talk about is more or less similar to regression, but then I don't use regression here. I use something called as method of least square or the least square method. Now, straight line method can be called as the method of least square, where I will use the linear equation. We define the equation by standard format, that is y is equal to a plus bx. The straight line equation will be defined by y equals to a plus bx, where a and b shall be the two constants that will be involved. For calculating a, we will use the formula a equals to summation y upon n. Whereas to calculate b, we will use the formula summation xy upon summation x square. once we get the values of A and B, then it becomes much easier for us to estimate any of the values of X if Y is given, or Y if X is given in the problem. This way, this method of least square is very popular, and this method is basically used when one of the variable among the two variables is time, that is the years. So if you are given the number of years and population, number of years and income, number of years and expenses, number of years and inflation, we will tend to use this method of least square, where we are given two different variables, age of the husband, age of the wife, size of the shoes and height of the student. Then there are two variables where I may prefer to use regression method to estimate one value when the other value is given in the problem. My next method and the so-called last method of forecasting is fitting a trend by using something called as time series. Under time series, we have multiple methods. One of the method is method of moving average or moving averages. Under this, we calculate the moving averages and try to establish a trend against the actual values given in a problem. Let us assume I am given data for last 7 or 8 years. Under the method of moving average, we will be calculating the trend, and we will establish the trend by using something called as the past data. For example, in this example, I have the annual production from 1976 to 1982. Based on the actual numbers, I can do something called as trend values by calculating moving averages. How to calculate the moving averages? We may get 3 yearly moving averages, we may get 5 yearly moving averages, and we need to understand how to work out these calculations. Let's see an example and try to understand. The whole concept of forecasting based on time series or forecasting based on moving averages can be understood only with the help of an example. Let's note down an example and then we'll start solving it. Now, this is an example where I have taken the average rainfall for a certain number of years from 1999 to 2008. In this case, can I calculate the moving averages? First, I need to calculate the moving totals. Now, I can calculate the moving totals for 3 years, 5 years, or maybe 7 years. In general, our problem will have either 3 yearly moving totals, 4 yearly moving totals, or 5 yearly moving totals. Let's say I'm doing it for 5 yearly moving totals. So under 5 yearly totals, we'll do the totaling for the first 5 years, which comes to 92 from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 10 से लेके 28 इन सब का total जो होगा, I will write at the center from 10, that is 1999 to 2003. I have got 5 years और मेरा center में आएगा 2001. So I will note down the total as 92. Now what I will do, I will ignore the first value and I will take from 2000, 2000, 2001, 2002 and 2003 and 2004. Again we have got 5 values from 2000 to 2004, which comes to 117. Again I will ignore the rainfall for the year 2000 and I will add 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 42 as one of the figure. So this will become 147. Next I will subtract 2001, that is 18, and I will add 50. that comes to 179 as the total. The next will be addition of 56 and subtraction of 24, which comes to 211. The last will be addition of 60 and subtraction of 28, which comes to 243. Just recheck the numbers. Now based on the 5 yearly totals, I can divide by 5 and get the 5 yearly moving average. Now this values in red indicates the trend based on the moving averages. Now this can establish the actual pattern with the average rainfall for the actual data. For example, in 2001 the actual rainfall is 18, but as per the trend we can get 18.4. For 2004 actual will be 35, but as per the trend it will be 35.8. For 2006 actual is 50, whereas actual according to the moving averages it should be 48.6. So this indicates the trend. We can establish a clear trend by using something called as moving averages to calculate the various estimates. So we can use the different methods of forecasting to estimate the future values based on the past data. Thanks for watching this video. Do subscribe to our channel Ekeeda.